Okay guys, I am here with Taylor, aka That Really Sucked. So the thing is, we were supposed to do this 2 days ago, but my vacation started and I was a little excited and I completely forgot. But we're here now. Taylor, how have you been holding up during 2020?
It's been a year. Job has been kind of rough. Really hard to teach virtually, and there's a lot of guilt for not being able to take care of the kids the way I need to, but it's kind of like the downside of education right now, I guess. But
yeah.
Personally, it's been pretty good personally.
That's good to hear. So you're a teacher, which I think teaching has always probably been a really challenging career, but never more so than now in 2020. I don't know much about teaching. Like, what's your field?
So my degree is in deaf and hard of hearing.
Okay.
We just call it deaf ed.
So since you're in the education field, like, you would probably have, like, a lot of insight. So, why don't we talk about how Glee portrayed educators?
Overall, there's a lot of cringy moments. And a lot of moments where I sit back and say, that's illegal.
Yeah.
Especially coming from the special ed point of view.
Mm-hmm.
They do a lot wrong.
Yeah.
To kind of go on a tangent here, I've been thinking about this a lot, and I've had this conversation with a lot of people, actually, but I kind of have a headcanon that Brittany falls somewhere on the spectrum.
Okay.
And especially one that has students with autism. Mm-hmm. At varying levels. They did a really, really poor job at portraying the neuroatypical or neurodivergent. I really wish they treated Brittany better as a student and as a human.
So we'll touch on that a little bit later, but well, first things first, as an educator, how do you feel about Will Schuester?
When I first watched the show early college, and I didn't really think anything of it. And then as I started learning more, I see him in a totally different light than other people probably do. I mean, a lot of people think he's cringy,
but when you see somebody on screen who is a reflection of like what you do for a living, your teacher, it sort of feels like a deeper slight. I can imagine.
You can tell that he cares, but this is the writer's fault. I don't necessarily think that they meant to write his character this way, but there's a lot of things that he says to the students that are just not okay. I see that on a daily basis. I've heard teachers speaking to students in ways that they shouldn't, and it really affects students more than people think, and I don't think Glee did a very good job at shining a light on those dark areas.
He was always sharing really personal things with his students.
I'm very careful about that.
I mean, as a teacher, you are a professional and you have to be personable, like, to the kids to a degree, but you also have to, like, draw certain boundaries and certain lines, and, like, Will constantly crossed them. Like, one of the weirdest things is, like, him making Finn his best man. It just seemed so, I don't know what that was about.
And I know a lot of teachers who friend their past students once they become of age. I don't think it's something that I would do. I know exactly what you're talking about. It is strange. Yeah. And I think there's definitely a line, and if I'm being honest, I've had bad days. I've shown up to sessions frustrated, and I've had students ask me if I'm okay. And I think to a certain degree, it's important for them to see that I'm human too. But I don't think I would have crossed the lines that Will crossed.
Yeah. So Will does get a lot of grief from the fandom, and I believe a lot of it is justified. Do you believe he showed, like, any favoritism? And do you think he ever did anything truly damaging? And if so, what was that?
He definitely shows favoritism. And I think Santana does a really good job at calling him out for it.
Yeah.
She does a really good job at that. I think it's important for the audience to see those moments where the students take that control over their education.
I was thinking, You know, in season 3, when I guess the treble tones lose, and there's that scene where Mercedes, Brittany, and Santana are in the bathroom, and they're sort of talking and sulking, and then Quinn comes in and like makes this peace offering for them to come back into the new directions. And I was thinking, instead of Quinn, that really should have been, I mean, it should not have happened in the girls' bathroom, but it should have been Mr. Schue coming to them and saying, you know what, guys, I was wrong, and I'm going to make changes so that, you know, everybody gets a moment to shine. Like, why didn't they make Mr. Schue do that?
I never thought of it that way. That's a really good perspective.
But yeah, like, why was it Quinn's job, you know?
Glee puts a lot of responsibility on people who are still developing as people. All of us are developing in some way, but especially adolescents who are just still in that journey. The adults sometimes didn't step up in the ways that they needed to.
I mean, speaking of Quinn, there's also that scene, I want to say it's at the beginning of season 3, where Quinn is maybe a skank, and she has the pink hair. She is in cahoots with Sue to sort of dig into Mr. Schue and make that, like, video. Anyways, so she goes into his office, and she lays into him, and then Mr. Schue lays back into her, which, that to me was really gross, because season 1, he had 2 students who were lost. Like, Finn was obviously lost because he was lied to and betrayed. And yes, Quinn did, you know, lie, but she was like a 15-year-old that was pregnant. And I didn't see Mr. Schue offer any guidance or support to her the way that he did to Finn. And I get that's because Mr. Schue and Finn, they had these like parallel storylines where their partners were lying to them about pregnancies. So I get that, but
Quinn deserved a lot better than everything that was dealt to her.
And, you know, maybe instead of Mr. Schue offering her some sort of guidance, maybe we could have seen Sue like making amends with Quinn and during that time. And
there was this brief moment where Sue basically told Quinn that she was proud of her. Quinn was becoming better than her. That bond Sue could have had with Quinn, that guidance and that motherly support that she didn't get at home.
We could have seen their like almost like a mentorship,
right,
kind of relationship like grow and explored. And we got like small little like dashes of that here and there, but we did not get like these continuous scenes like we did with Finn and Mr. Schue about how much they're like. On to a lighter question. What do you think about Holly Holliday as a teacher? Because this is my take. Like, I don't know if she was a better teacher than Will, but I think she was much more enjoyable and interesting to watch, like as a viewer. The way she came in and excited the Glee kids, I feel like that's what she did with the viewing audience as well. She came in and her approach felt exciting. Like Will, on the other hand, like mid-season 2, I feel like he had sort of stalled as a character. And I didn't feel like he had any place to go. Like the only thing he really had was his on-again, off-again thing with Emma. But apart from that, there was nothing really interesting or intriguing about him. And to be honest, if he would have left and Gwyneth Paltrow as Holly Holliday would have taken over, I would not have complained.
I would have loved that.
So what do you think about Holly Holliday?
She was amazing. Her love for kids, her passion for bringing the material to them in ways that they could understand. Not only her ability to reach them as students, but her ability to reach them as humans. She recognized that just because they were young didn't mean that they couldn't comprehend these really difficult things.
She would have been a much more, I mean, season 1, Will was very much like central and a focal point to the show, but like as we got further and further in, he became almost like this side character. But I feel like if Holly Holliday had been the teacher, she would have been a really interesting lead. She may be like the most exciting, interesting teacher at school, but you know, when she goes home, she's a mess and she's learning how to get her life together and adult. She would have had a more interesting journey, like personal-wise, I think.
Her story was beautiful. The way that, like you just said, at home she's a mess and she's trying to figure out life. And I think that was really human, because aren't we all trying to figure out life? She didn't try to be that perfect teacher who never screwed up. She was always growing, and I think that gave the other characters room to grow with her. Even
though she's an adult, she is in a sort of state of adolescence herself. Us being able to watch her like graduate into proper adulthood, that would have been an interesting journey, which, again, Mr. Schue his just seemed very bland and boring. Another person I think we should have seen more of, and we could have explored more of, is Emma. Like, the writing for her wasn't always perfect. Of course there's flaws, but I did find her story compelling because it felt real. She lived with OCD, I think. I'm not sure if that's like the proper term to use. And she struggled with it, and despite this, she always showed up for the job and for the kids that needed her. I really wish we had seen more of Emma as an educator. I mean, do you?
Oh, definitely. And out of the entire cast, not just because I'm a teacher, but for a lot of other reasons, Emma is the one that I relate to most, because I have OCD also, and have a lot of viewpoints on that. I mean, but to be a teacher and to have OCD is one of the most challenging things that I have ever done. And to see Jema's portrayal of Emma and the way she handles all of that, Glee goes about it in a really stereotypical way. OCD is more than just the contamination OCD, which is what Emma struggles with. I really wish they would have delved deeper into what was actually going on in her head, the anxiety and the compulsions and the thoughts and everything that was going on, along with what we got to see as an audience. And you're exactly right. She showed up for her job, and she put her entire being into her job.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of it. I mean, I sat through it when I first watched it. Was it Will and Emma's relationship? I just didn't like how it progressed, and I didn't like how we only really saw it from his perspective. When it came to her OCD, he kind of came off as like this guy who thought he could save her or fix her, instead of like just being a supportive partner who helped her in the ways that she needed.
I see it that way too. I've lived it. The way he comes off as, well, if you just do this, then it'll be better. And forcing her through those compulsions and not allowing her the time to process all of it. I was not a fan of that.
There's a scene where it's like a point where she's with Carl, and she mentions that like he and her were hanging out, and she took one like small step towards something that it challenged her, and she felt comfortable with it. And Will was like, oh wow. And he like really belittled this one step that she took for herself, and that just like really grossed me out. And then there was another scene where didn't he shove some kind of fruit in her face and like tell her to eat it?
He tried to get her to eat fruit without washing it.
Oh, okay. That to me seems so
It was disgusting, and I've lived it, and I've had someone basically throw food on a plate and hand it to me and expect me to be better. And I felt for her in that scene.
Yeah.
I hope by us shining a light on that stuff,
yeah, and
people will pick up on it.
Yeah, and I think the fandom is pretty much in agreement. Emma was too good for Will. How about this one? Schue. My take is sort of, I think she was a great character. A little bit evil cartoon a little bit at times, and she did things that were super questionable, but I like to think that at the end of the day, deep down inside, she cared about, well, some of the Glee kids anyways, at least her Cheerios.
I have worked with really toxic teachers. They exist.
Oh, I believe you.
They're the hardest to work with. At the end of the day, I think that Schue really did have a heart for the kids. Mm-hmm. I think there was a lot of potential for growth. Mm-hmm. And we missed out on a huge part of what made Schue.
Again, as a TV character, she was great. But I imagine if you had to go to work with side by side with Schue every day, it would not be pleasant at all. So we kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, but how did you feel about Brittany failing senior year? Did it grate on you that Puck had an entire episode about the Glee guys rallying around him to make sure he graduated, only for Brittany's character to sort of be like an afterthought?
Absolutely. I don't, and I never will understand or like why they treated Brittany that way. At least the teachers that I work with, that I have the pleasure of working with, they would not have let a student fall through the cracks that deeply.
On one hand, you can look at it as like, it was behind the scenes, the writers needed a handful of the originals to sort of be anchored at McKinley and Lima, so that there were some familiar faces there still. So I get that part of it, but I feel like there could have been a better way to accomplish that. Oh, you know what? I didn't put this on the list. It's the questions, but I remember seeing this like long post on Tumblr like years ago, and it was about how Will as an educator, Will as a character was stalled and stale and didn't really have anything to offer the viewing audience. And somebody mentioned that they thought that what they could have done is put like Santana, one of the most compelling characters, into the teaching role.
Oh my gosh, I would have loved that.
I mean, when Corey had to go, things sort of had to shift, and they had to move some stuff around behind the scenes to continue the show. And so the person was like, Santana's really compelling. Like, Glee is so out there and far-fetched, of course. So it's just like, you just have to massage the story a little bit to make it conceivable that Santana would move there and get a job at the school and actually take over the Glee club. And because this person from the Tumblr who was making the Tumblr post said that I guarantee you if Santana had been leading in that room, that they don't think the audience would have like bled off the way that it did.
I totally agree. And we got a little snippet of Santana being that educator and that and that mentor with Marley. Mm-hmm. Really brief, but it was really beautiful.
We talked about how, like, if Holly Holliday had taken over in season 2, we could have watched her like personal growth along with like the kids or whatever, and she would have been equally as compelling. And I feel like it would have been a little bit like that if Santana had taken over Glee Club in season 5 instead of bringing Will back in. Watch her.
And it's all because of Naya. This genuine love for people and just understanding people that she would have been a great educator.
We would have watched Santana grow into this role, into this career, and like we would see her stumble and we would see her learn, and I think that would have been really interesting and really unique. I mean, I really love Santana in New York, and I have a lot of feelings about how Santana in New York could have been so much more than what we got. It could have been even better, and I love her in New York, but I mean, I would have been okay if she took over Glee Club, if, it would have been handled properly.
If Glee had handled things properly, in the perfect world, Glee would have been what us fanfic writers have made it to be.
Glee has sort of really come back in a big way in 2020. Like at the beginning of the year, especially at the start of quarantine, we have all these new young people discovering the show, and Glee is a mess, and it has so many flaws, but I feel like, in a way, it is a new classic. It's like people look back at Buffy the Vampire Slayer, all these like iconic shows of the past. It's like, yes, we can look at them now, 10 years, 20 years later, we could see the flaws, but in a way, they were really culturally important, and it's that sort of cements them as new classics. So as messy as it is, I really do think Glee is a new classic.
It saved a lot of lives. It was there for a lot of people when no one else or nothing else was there. It's always gonna be a big piece of my heart. There are really bad things about it, but the good things outweigh those.
Yeah. Was there ever a moment in the show that actually made you proud to be a teacher?
So many. Holly with Brittany and Santana in the choir room. Mm-hmm. I had a personal moment with the student, and the student has had a really rough life. Basically, everybody thought he was stupid, and when I brought in kind of basic level sight word work, I was worried that he would feel offended, but when I pulled it out and he started reading these sight words, and he was reading them accurately, he was so proud of himself. And we just had this moment. He paused and signed to me, "I'm smart." And I signed back, "Of course you are." And at this point, he was 16. It's just those connections that you never forget.
That's amazing. Here's a lighter question. If you were a teacher in the Gleeverse, who would you sit with in the teacher's lounge?
I think it's obvious, but Holly and Emma.
And Beast.
And Beast, of course. I love him.
Yeah. Well, I try to get some of Beast chicken from Breadsticks.
I feel like that was a really sensitive subject for them to cover, but I think it played out beautifully. It
could have been handled better, but like everything else that Glee does, it botched it.
The heart of it was there.
Yeah, that's it. So I have a super serious question here. Have you ever worn a sweater vest or a tracksuit to class?
No, I would get way too hot.
Oh yeah, you live in Texas.
Yes.
I live in Texas.
And I'm an itinerant teacher, so I go school to school, so by the time I got inside into the classroom, I would just...
So, but real talk now, what is it like being a teacher in 2020?
I think 2020 has redefined what teaching is. I think a lot of people who underestimated teachers before are realizing exactly what we do. And there are days where I am barely functioning. I've had countless parents this year make me cry. That's my one wish, is for parents just to realize how hard we're trying and just to be nice. Would I go to a different field? No. I wouldn't want to do anything else, but it's made me rethink myself as a teacher.
I mean, even before the pandemic, teachers were so undervalued. Like, years ago, I once read a headline about how over the course of a school year, a teacher will spend a couple $1,000s of their own money in order to make sure that their classroom has everything it needs. And like, it's just that y'all aren't compensated enough for the work that you do.
No, we aren't. I can't tell you how much I've spent of my own money on the kids.
Yeah.
But if I don't do it, no one's going to do it. And these kids already are at a less advantaged place in life. And if I can just get them a step further, then that's what I'm going to do.
So Glee has had a renaissance in 2020 with a lot of new young people becoming fans, and I think a huge chunk of them are just going back to school, and so any words of advice for them?
It's okay not to know who you are yet. It's okay to grow and to find yourself. It's okay to change your mind about who you are. If you decide one morning you're this and the next you're not so sure, that's okay. The education side of it. You may not think that teachers care, but we do. And I know a lot of the material may seem like you won't ever use it in life, but good teachers will reach past the curriculum and really reach the kids. And the teachers are there for a reason.
Yeah.
And they love you. And I'm not saying every single one. And you'll know who those are.
There's some Sues and there's some Wills out there, but there's also some Hollys and some Emmas and some Coach Beasts too, guys. Be kind to them.
It makes me kind of teary talking about teachers and their love for kids, because I've seen it, I've witnessed it. Kind of from a younger teacher's perspective, because I'm closer to their age than a lot of their teachers probably.
Yeah.
Life matters, and your education matters. It seems pointless sometimes, but it's not. It's going to bring you to a lot of good places. Maybe if young students know that there are teachers out there that like the same things that they do. You know, I'm younger, I'm really into Glee, and I'm really into writing, and
hopefully if you're listening to this, you also know that Taylor draws, and she has some amazing works out there. I think you should put them on Etsy and sell them, to be honest. You know, you need some extra pocket change, there you are. I think they're that good.
I don't know if they're that good. I really like making people happy with them. You know, on a really, really hard day, I come home and I sketch.
Y'all should all go on Tumblr and check out Taylor's work, because it's amazing. And
thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on one of these episodes and talking about the show. I know it wasn't really Britannia-centric, but I feel like currently with what's going on in the world right now, it's a timely topic.
Thank you for having me, and
no problem.
I really liked sharing my perspective.
Also, everybody listening, Black Lives Matter, Black Trans Lives Matter. Please go register to vote, you guys. This is really important.
This is the year that matters. If any other year matters, it's this one.
You can't sit it out. Alright, guys. I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.